Hey, darling. So I want to talk about birds today. Yes, birds. Wings. Some of them fly, some of them don't. Some of them, are predators and some of them are, just kind of docile or whatever. Some of them are tall and some of them are small. And birds, birds. Birds. Now, I want you to think in your mind, okay? I want you to use your imagination and I want you to think about all the birds that you know that exist. There's some that you don't know exist. But I want you to think about all the types of birds, okay? I want you to think about how they look. I want you to think about how they can look different. I want you to think about how their bodies have adapted to what they actually do, how they hunt, how they feed, how they procreate, how they do all the stuff that birds do. All right? I want you to think about all of that. So let's take a ostrich, okay? Like look at how an ostrich looks. See how tall it is, the long neck, the big old feet. Like think about it, a ostrich egg. Like how huge that egg is, how they take care of it, how feisty they are, how aggressive they are. Let's think so okay, so that's an ostrich. Let's think about a hummingbird. The special shit that a hummingbird can do. Like a hummingbird is one of the fastest birds. And they're also small. Like they're little. They're not like this big ass ostrich. They're small and but they fly fast. They actually can fly in one space. They ain't gotta glide and go in this direction. Like they actually can flap their wings so fast that they can just fly in one spot. Instead of moving around, they can kind of just sit there and they just fly super super fast. There are even things around. There's a particular type of hummingbird, sword long-billed hummingbird, that there are particular flowers that have adapted that only they eat from, like the angel trumpet or something. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but literally their environment, they have adjusted, and their environment and things in their environment has adjusted to them. So their beaks are so long that they're the only ones who actually can get to the nectar of these particular flowers. And so these two things, it's called mutualism. These two things have adapted to each other in a beneficial way. That's what mutualism is, where these two species has, I fuck with you, you fuck with me, we benefit each other, and bam, mutualism. Then another kind of bird that we have is like the raptors, the kind of or eagles, and those birds that kind of, baby, we stalking your ass, like even like owls. We see some shit, we swoop in, snatch them with our big talons. They got nails, they're strong. We got this beak that is like, we can tear through flesh, and we just have the tools. We have adapted to have the tools to be way more aggressive in catching what we want and snatching it up and eating it and da 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 da. And then we got chickens. Chickens, we can't fly. We can't do nothing. We actually are just kind of become this kind of industry for some humans to kind of keep replicating us so they can eat us. And we can, we can be in coops on a farm, or we can be on a chicken plant. Chickens, you know how chickens are. And so we have all these various birds navigating things. We got birds that are really, really rarely sighted, that you don't see all the time. Like because they live in some remote part of the country, they are rarely sighted, rarely studied. We don't know much shit about them. They just out. We know they exist because we see them sometimes, but they just kind of out here, and we haven't been able to figure out everything about them because how they live their life. That's how some birds we know kind of around the world exist. There are some birds that we know not to fuck with because they have the tools to disembowel us, like cassowaries. They are one of the most dangerous birds that are known for killing humans with their dagger-like claws, right? And there are some birds that we're used to playing with and used to caging, like parrots, cockatoos, parakeets. Yeah, they're usually the birds that we kind of fuck with. They do some cool ass shit, like talk back to you. And, like parrots, they can talk back to you. And even like some ravens can talk back to you. And ravens are really, really fucking smart. They can solve problems. They do all kinds of cool ass shit. And there's some birds that do some shady ass shit. Shady ass shit. Have you heard of brood parasites? Brood parasites are birds that put their eggs in another bird's nest, and eventually, when their birds are hatched from the warmth of the nesting bird's body that's supposed to be going to her babies, they eventually will kick out the eggs of the other species of birds. Shady. With evolution, birds adapt unique traits depending on where they are in the world. One of the examples of birds that adapted because they were stuck in a particular environment is the Darwin finches of the Galapagos Islands. Because they got stuck on this island, their beak started to specialize and adapt to exploit a specific ecological niche or resource that was available on that island. So if we're down here on the ground and we need to break these seeds open, we need a strong beak. But if we're in the trees, if we adapted in the trees, we're going to need beaks that adapt to the insects and the fruits that we're going to be eating in those trees. So these two different birds split off in their adaptation, the one that were more grounded and the ones that were more up in the trees. Feel me? So birds adapt. But we're not here to talk about birds. We're here to talk about Iran. So you like, Diamond, why are we talking about all these birds? And what this got to do with Iran? And trans history, because we are a trans-led feminist show, and I'm trying to teach y'all stuff about trans around the world. How does this all connect? So let's talk about Iran and its transgender history. But as I have this conversation, I want y'all to think about them birds. Iran. It's a country known for its extreme religion, its oppression of women, and its, killing of gay people. Because homosexuality is illegal there. If they don't slaughter you, they'll lock your ass up with a quickness. And, ironically, it is the place that has the most gender reassignment surgeries. So it makes you beg the question, why are they doing all the bottom surgeries out there? What's going on? So let's do a deep dive in some trans history in Iran. Now, this history, got a couple of players in it. So we gonna start with the main one, my girl. I don't know her, but she's one of the girls. She's my girl. Her name is Mariam Makara. Makara is a pivotal figure in the transgender rights advancements in Iran. Her courageous advocacy directly led to a fatwa, which one that happened in 1987, which led to an official recognition for transgender individuals, and this led to allowing them to have sex reassignment surgery, shaping the current legal framework for transgender people in Iran. Now, this framework doesn't mean that it's a paradise for trans people, but it actually kind of allows them to kind of exist in a way that other LGBT people just don't safely exist in Iran. While same-sex relationships are illegal and severely punished, all right, severely punished, the government officially recognizes trans people and permits them to get the surgery, even offering them like subsidies to help pay for the procedure. This is like a unique situation that stems largely from that 1987 fatwa, But don't let that shit fool you, because just despite that legal recognition, for gender transitioning, transgender people in Iran face significant social discrimination, stigma, and challenges in area of, just like us over here, but I don't want to say it's exactly the same, but in areas like employment, family acceptance, personal safety. The government stance often frames transgender people as a medical disorder that is cured through surgery rather than recognized as like this broad spectrum of gender identity. So I want y'all to pay attention to that distinction. There is a particular level of medicalism that is a part of the government's accepting of trans people. Oh, so they say, "Oh, you're trans, then you need to get a sex change to fix your transness." You say you want to be a girl, then you need to get a pussy. You say you want to be a boy, then you need to get a dick. Because you ain't going to be out here trying to be a girl and keeping your dick. Because then you playing games, ho. So get out of here. If you want to be recognized as a woman, first of all, you got to live as by the rules that women do when it comes to our Sharia law, our Muslim law, because we're a Muslim country. So you have to live like women and abide by the rules like women, but you also got to get that ding-a-ling cut off, because that's the rules. You want us to accept that you trans? Great, we're going to fix it, because being trans is a defect, medical defect that can be fixed through surgery. So imagine, okay, you got 6 fingers. We know that normal human beings have 5 fingers. So, since you have 5 fingers, we're going to kind of snip that 6th one off and make your hand look normal so that you can have regular hands. That's how they think about it. We are fixing a defect. You have a misconstrued mind with your body that's not going in the same direction. So we're going to fix it and change your genitalia to match what's in your mind. Since you say you trans, got it? There's not these kind of nuances that we have been discussing here in the United States, and how we can kind of live with these kind of nuances of trans people. Nah, not pre-op, post-op, this, you non-binary. They don't accept all that bullshit. You say you trans, prove it. Get that dick cut off. If you want to be accepted as a woman, get a pussy and start living covered how our women do. Then we accept you. Great. Got it? There's a medical thing that you have to do. It ain't just, "Ooh, I say I'm a woman." No. Slice and dice. Now, don't get it twisted. This is 2025. And in American culture, we always talk about transness in this kind of nuanced sense now, in these years that we have currently had this kind of trans renaissance. We have been educating y'all, and I love to toot my own horn, but our show has been a part of that education, hopefully, amongst many other people who are actually educating you about the trans experience in this new age era that has given you a lot of those kind of nuances around our experience, and how some people think about transness, and how some people think about their transition, and what they think they should do with their bodies, how they make these kind of various decisions when it comes to how their transition looks. And that can look so many miscellaneous ways. But understand that that is 2025 concept of transness in America. America used to have this same dedication to medicalism when it comes to transness. Back in the day, when Harry Benjamin was making his standard rule for trans people, and their other doctors was putting their input, and Hirschfeld out in Germany, and who the Nazis kind of attacked and wore him out, and destroyed his sexology institution, and all the queer information and studies and research that he was doing in Germany. All that stuff led to this being a particular medicalized way you go about doing your transition. You're not supposed to be out here just living with a dick. as a trans woman or a trans man out here just living with a pussy. You're supposed to be trying to get if you're a trans man, you're supposed to be out here trying to get a dick. And if you are a trans woman, you're supposed to be out here trying to get a pussy. So we're doing these experimental surgeries, trying it out and seeing how it works out. Of course, because of those experimental surgeries, there's a lot of people who were botched and experimented on. And over time, the surgery got better and better and better to where nowadays it's just amazing. It's like a great vaginoplasty is a great surgery. There's still advances happening with phalloplasties with the trans men. It's just we are in a whole different era. But back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was, it just was a lot of experimentation. And the standard was if you were trapped in the wrong body, then you're trying to fix your body to fix your mind. And so there was in the early 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, it was about getting your sex change. And you're supposed to cut your whole life off and not tell anybody that you're trans. You're supposed to get your surgery and just start a whole new life. That was the standard of care. That's what doctors was telling you to do. Start your hormones, leave your whole life behind and start to live your life as the trans woman or the cis woman that you are, because we fix a defect. You are a woman and we fix a defect. That's why old school. I'm talking about. I feel like I'm old school now because I came out in the in the 90s and da 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 da. But I'm talking about people who old school to me, who came out in this era of time. If you meet a lot of them from that time, a lot of them done passed away because just the life expectancy isn't real high. But you got some of them that's still around, like Carolyn Crossy. You got people who went through that standard. Now, Miss Major, our kind of queen mother matriarch, she's a different kind of trans woman that I'm talking about trans women that kind of went through the transition. Her transition didn't go the same exact way as some of the more cisgender, cis heteronormative aligned trans women that I have come to grow and learn about. And so I think the one that right now is coming to mind is like Carolyn Crossy, just from the UK. It's just about we get on our hormones, we get our sex changes, and then we just live our life in stealth. And Carolyn Crossy, aka Tula, she has a whole book and telling her story about how she was outed. She was a Bond girl, all that kind of stuff. But she's one of those girls, even to this day, who is living that life of I'm just a regular woman, I'm just doing my thing. But now that this trans renaissance is happening, I can tell y'all my story as a trans woman, but I'm just kind of living my life. I get my sex change and now I'm living my life. And there's tons of girls now that are like that live like that too. When we think about just all the girls who just kind of out here doing their thing. Angelica Ross, they have done that because that was a part of their journey. But there's a lot of girls now that don't go through that whole bottom surgery thing. But this was a part of our history. So now we have this kind of I don't want to say fluid, but we have this kind of nuance level, these subtleties of transness, these kind of more refined ideas of transness of this new age of how everybody's transition is different. But we do come from a time that was deeply rooted in that medicalism in the same way that Iran's is medicalized too. Got it? So I don't want you to think that we didn't come from that. We did come from that. Now, I think the reason why they have stricter rules is because they are a Muslim nation and where patriarchy is a little bit heavier. Is that the right word? I don't know if it's heavier because the patriarchy is heavy over here too. But it just, patriarchy is everywhere, but it kind of morphs into different things depending on what culture you in. So I think that's a better way to, I want to say it's better, heavier, lighter, da 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 da. Patriarchy is patriarchy in everywhere, but it just has morphed into a different beast in America than the beast that it is in Iran. Got it? And so, because of that different beast that you're battling, in this particular scenario with transgender people, it just uniquely created this space. The stars aligned and created this space where a trans person is accepted if you follow these very specific rules. Doesn't mean that they don't have no problems, but you got to follow these particular rules. So let's go back to talk about Mariam. So Mariam was born in the 1950s in a rural Providence in Iran. She was the only son to her farm owning father. Now, her father was one of them Muslim dudes that had like 8 wives, child. Because you know, in the Muslim culture, if you can afford 4 wives, you can have 4 wives. So, of course, patriarchy lets you patriarchy a little bit more. So he got a little greedy. And so he had 8. So Mariam, from a young age, consistently expressed like this female identity, preferring girl clothes, girl activities, even using chalk to imitate like makeup at the age of 2. Stereotypical story as old as time as trans people. We know that this is our identity at a young age. Classic trans story. Not everybody's trans story, but listen, this is one of the hallmarks of our story, is that we knew that our identity was different than what we were at sign as birth. So Mariam is no different. So her mother struggled with accepting her. So this lead to Mariam prioritizing taking feminizing hormones instead of immediately going to get surgery as she was growing up and coming out. After the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Mariam faced like severe persecution. So I need to go into a little bit more detail about this revolution and how she played a part in her transition, played a part in making these changes and getting these changes happening to where the super, super conservative regime actually accepted her. So let's go and talk about the Iranian this war that happened, this kind of change in regime, because it's also relevant to right now with the bombing and America bombing them and meddling in the Israeli business and all that kind of shit of what's going on now. It has something to do to give you a little bit of history of that too, so you can know what's going on. All right, so let's go into that history. So in Iran now, what the kind of stereotype, most of us have never been over there, but the kind of stereotype that we hear about Iran is that it's this really strict Muslim government that doesn't allow women to drive and doesn't allow women to do this, and they have to be covered, and all these kind of strict, really conservative rules that's so different from our culture. And that difference is sometimes drastically different and sometimes really fucking similar. Some of the drastic things. Let me give you some of the like a drastic example. Over there, women aren't allowed to sing generally. There's some contexts that they are allowed to sing, but because to them a woman's singing voice is erotic, you're actually not they usually are prohibited to sing in public. Certain contexts they let them, like in a choir sometimes in a duet in certain circumstances, but in general, like you can't just be singing in public as a woman. That's looked down upon and prohibited. Singing. That sounds ridiculous to us as Americans, but what also sounds ridiculous is keeping a brain dead woman alive to incubate a baby that is not viable. So, yeah. So, another ridiculous thing to me, over there, you can't hang a virgin. Say that so she does something and get convicted, and it, the punishment is hanging because they love a good corporal punishment. But it's illegal to hang a virgin. So, if she's a virgin, they will rape her so that they can hang her. Yeah. My last ridiculous example is kind of like the legal standing of a woman. they consider a woman's brain to be half a brain. So if they're testifying in court, you need two women to testify as a witness to equal the weight of one man. So this lack of value indicates a diminished view of their credibility and inherent worth within their legal system. So men's brains have more value. Can you imagine? Do they know men? Have they engaged with a man? But I want to be clear that I'm not pointing this stuff out to compare like US and Iran's patriarchy, because it actually is just their patriarchy warped into a different beast. Our patriarchy warped into another beast. It adapted to be still patriarchy, still ugly, but the rules over here warped into something else, while the rules over there warped into something else. But they're still the same fucking species of patriarchal oppression. You feel what I'm saying? So it's like being a type of bird. One is an ostrich and one is a harpy eagle. And then you go on another side of the world and one is a toucan or a puffin. And then you'll find one that's a hummingbird. They all motherfucking birds. They just adapted to a different environment, different influences to become different shapes, different sizes, with different traits to eat us the fuck up. Catch us and eat us and wear us out. Now, this is a side note, but my strategy to not get killed by an ostrich is not going to be the same in my strategy to not get killed by a bald eagle. They're two different birds, so I'm going to have to fight them in a different way, but be very clear. There are women in every part of this fucking globe that are fighting against these motherfucking birds. But anyway, I'm going on down the rabbit hole on a tangent. Back to the history of trans history in Iran. There was a whole other government in power before the one that we have now that was a little bit more. Now, I ain't trying to say that they were like, oh my God, it's America. No, America is unique in its own way when it comes to the government. But there was a more democratic version, more what we would kind of consider a more liberal version of the government that was going on in like the 70s, like the 60s and 70s. So the Shah regime was known for its authoritarianism. So it wasn't just some, super liberal place. But because they very limited political freedoms and suppressed, all kinds of stuff. They have like a secret police that was notorious for brutalizing people and just wearing people human rights out. So I don't want you to think because they are a little bit more liberal that they were this kind of like, ooh, utopia for people. No, bitch, no. But at the time, there was this Western, influence, and like they were becoming more secular, more of the world during this time. And so their close relationship with the United States and their leaders' efforts to westernize Iran were seen by many as a threat to traditional Islamic values and, traditional Iranian culture. This kind of included changes in the legal systems, women's rights specifically, and education. So understand that this leadership was trying to take Iran into a new era that was a little bit more liberal. But there was a sector of people who were like, nah, motherfuckers, this is not what's going down. Like, y'all, this ain't looking right. Especially particular religious leaders. If it was in our country, on our bird, remember all these motherfuckers birds. If it was on our birds, these would be like the Christian nationalists, fundamentalists, those kind of people saying, we're straying away from God. The Christian values of our forefathers in America. We need to oppress women and steal a fucking bird. But yes, this is what was happening in the 60s and 70s in Iran. Like there was a more liberal, not good, but more liberal regime. They were not a good regime. They still was oppressive and authoritarianism. Like I want to repeat that. But they were expanding their horizons when it comes to being more liberal. If you look up pictures of Iran in the 70s, you will get like pictures of women kind of with their hair done and they're not covered. It just looks a little bit more modern where you like, well, damn, how did it go back to where everybody is covered and da 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 da? How did it go back to that? There was some leaders who was like, we're going away from God, honey. This is not what Allah wants from us. This is not what Allah. We are getting away from the true ways of Islam. Y'all are trying to be more like Western folks, child, and y'all are derailing from the religion. So these more conservative, I don't like to call them right wing, but what we would consider right wing, these kind of more religious zealots come in and say, y'all are staring far away from Allah. Y'all staring far away from Islam and the teachings. We need to get back to the basics where the women are the women and the men are the men, and these are the rules. Gender roles are strict. Men are in power. Women are subservient and submissive and taking care of the home and the babies, and they don't have any power. And no, we need to get back to that. So, what I'm trying to explain to you is the tension in ideologies, the different factors within Iran, in how we should move as a culture. There is ideology happen, like we should go more towards the traditional Islamic way. And then some people was like, yeah, we fuck with that, but we want to go a little bit more secular because we want to be a global entity that is kind of like, modernizing like the rest of the world. But this didn't just come. This relationship with the US in Iran was built because the US love to meddle in people's business. They love to be over there fucking shit up and then hiding their hand. Because in 1953, they orchestrated, the US and the UK orchestrated a coup, which overthrew the democratically elected prime minister at the time, which fueled anti-Western sentiments and a sense of betrayal from many Iranians. So this regime that I'm talking about that is more westernized and liberal was put in place because of that coup in 1953 that the US played a part in. Because of the autocratic ruling of the Shah regime that the US schemed to put in power, it lacked political kind of participation from the people who were, while we consider more right wing, they were frustrated. They were angry because they were building this kind of resentment because they weren't being listened to. So the more conservative factors in this country overthrew this regime. And that's why we have a way more conservative faction in power in Iran right now. Literally, what is happening in America? We see that for this whole little beautiful past 40 years, the more liberal, progressive, the side that I'm on, has been in power. And while they are not perfect, the right wing is frustrated because they have a whole other agenda, right? And so now they are, yay, I want to come up and overthrow and do all these crazy schemes and lying and all this bullshit to overthrow because they feel that they are not being listened to. They're frustrated. They don't give a fuck about human rights and all this other bullshit. I personally feel like this is what's happening to our country right now. What happened in Iran. And so it's ironic that we love to act like, oh, we want them to be free and democratic over there in Iran. But simultaneously, we are dismantling our democratic system and our rules. We're like turning into them. Wild. Anyway, that brings us to Rohola Kokomani. I may be slaughtering the pronunciation of that name, as I can't pronounce pronunciation. I may be slaughtering it, but this is another person, Rohola Kokomani. Cockamamie. Had to make that corny pun. Anyway, he is one of those religious leaders that was fully against the Shah regime. And he was living in the UK at the time. Because the regime, the liberal regime, was getting overthrown, Mariam, the trans woman, was, because of how she was living in Iran openly as a trans woman, she started to get more harassed, and it just because the more conservative regime was coming into power and overthrew the more liberal conservative regime, she started to face like very severe persecution, including like her being arrested, her being forced injection of testosterone, and her being detained in psychiatric institutions because of her gender identity. So she was going through all of this stuff, but she finally got away and went to the UK where that guy was staying. So because of her advocacy and her kind of pleading to him to help her with her particular situation, he started to advocate for her. There are some portions of the Quran that can be interpreted to be in favor of trans women. There is a hadith in the Quran where Muhammad spares a trans woman in ancient times because she was living her truth and living as a woman. And he says, as long as she's living respectful the way a woman should, leave them alone. And he spared her life. And that was in the Quran. And so her advocacy towards this more super stark conservative person and those elements in the Quran allowed him to help her. And so that led to him writing that 1987 fatwa that, despite all the fucking bullshit, it led to legal recognition of gender transition of trans people in the face of Iran's significant discrimination and stigma. Do you feel what I'm saying? So her advocacy led for him to help her and create a law that actually supported trans people. So a fatwa is kind of like a Supreme Court ruling. This ruling, as it stands, it often frames transgender identity as a medical disorder to be cured through surgery, rather than recognize a broad spectrum of gender identity. So I want you to understand that that is the uniqueness in the sense of where it is now. We are trying to come out of that. There's some people, old school trans people, that still feel that medical way is the way. I'm not particularly that, but because it just doesn't give room for people to kind of express themselves and be how they want to be. But remember what I said. They are all motherfucking birds. So this unique adaptation of this particular bird just so happens to allow trans people to thrive a little bit. To thrive a little bit, this pocket of opportunity for them if they do all the rules and do the surgeries and live the life of a respectable Muslim woman, then they can be semi-accepted because this is a medical defect that can be fixed by surgery. But let's be clear, make no mistake, Iran is not no paradise for trans people, or definitely not LGBT people in general, because honey, they will wear you out. But because of the reason why this unique trans situation is even possible is because of their strict adherence to gender binary and gender roles. Like, if you act like a woman the way we want you to act like a woman, then and get the surgeries, then we will allow you to be a woman, because there are these strict gender binary rules. Can't be no nuance. No nuance. And there may be some trans people who will go along with this, who think, yo, as long as I can live my life as the woman I want to be or man that I want to be, they will accept and align their politics with these more rigid rules. And they are start sounding like bigots when they're talking to trans people who don't fit those binary rules. We see that a lot in our culture too. Once they get their rights and their ability to be passable and pretty and go to the bathroom without any problems, they don't care about anybody else who might have a different experience and nuance in regards to their gender expression. And another nuance that I want you to think about, this is also where trans women still are benefiting from patriarchal privilege. Because imagine how a trans man is treated when I just explained to y'all that they think females have a half a brain. So your half brain ass think you want to be a man? Yeah, right. That is not far-fetched for people in power over there to think. Do you see what I'm saying? So a trans woman would have an easier time navigating their transition than a trans man, because she has a full brain. Got it? And in how misogyny works, is way easier for a man to relinquish his power than a woman to gain it. You feel what I'm saying? So, for example, as a trans woman, because we want more women to objectify, sure, you can become a trans woman, because you're just going to be laid on your back getting fucked and doing housework for somebody. So we much rather allow the fluidity in creating another oppressed person, as opposed to letting this female change to a man and giving them the power of a man. That's a way more uphill battle to climb. Whereas allowing somebody to be a weaker entity in society to be able to run over, that's a much more easier thing to do. Oh, you a man, and you a male man, and you want to be something different? Sure, you can be weak woman. Go cook for me. Go make me a sandwich. You can't have no babies, but I can fuck you. Go clean the kitchen. I hope I'm making that clear to y'all. And so it's not saying that this government is great and it doesn't solve any of the issues. It's just that this pocket of the world allows them to be a little bit more free. It's similar to like when Roe versus Wade was intact. All right. So this pocket of the world, the bird over here in the United States, allow people to have that choice. Got it? So to other people who don't have that choices in other countries, be like, oh my God, America is the land of the free. Not knowing that it's a fucking bird. They're still a bird. They will be having these progressive, these progressive ideas and these cultural significant things, and they'll be strutting around like a peacock, like they're better than other more oppressive cultures, but they too will have some bullshit on the books that's still oppressing women. Yeah, your green and pretty iridescent feathers are cute for now, until some shit started to switch up and we get a buffoon in office and some old school bird ideologies start to creep back in. And then that woman is having a ectopic pregnancy and you're not fucking doing nothing to help her. So even though we supposedly care about life, we let her die based on these weird rules. This island is making us make choices and adapt to some weird shit. It's morphing into something else. It's morphing into a more conservative bird. So now we have women who are brain dead being used as incubators. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not that the US is better. for trans people or for women. It's not that they're better. It's just it's a bird with a different fucking that have adapted to something else. I hope that I'm trying to be as clear as I can and make this as layman as it can be. It's not that they are better or worse. There's elements that are worse over there, and there's elements that are worse over here. Kind of. But it's complicated. But it's just a different bird. So, shout out to Mariam Malkara. She is a pivotal figure in transgender rights advancement in Iran. Her courageous advocacy directly led to these advancements. She directly impacted change in her motherfucking bird. that allows trans people in her country to be just a little bit more free, a little bit more. So, shout out to her. And shout out to the people all across the globe in different cultures that are fighting against the bird brain ideology of these men or women or people. Don't give up the fight. Don't let these governments and their propaganda make you not see the humanity of the people of each party when it comes to America. Because as a black woman living in America, I'm not always fully down with what's going on with my government, clearly. And I'm pretty sure there's some people in Iran that's like, we don't fuck with them. And we're over here fighting to try to change what's going on over here. We are all just in an Alfred Hitchcock classic film, The Birds. And so I don't want you to let the propaganda and the media machine dehumanize us and dehumanize them. It's a wide range of people that live over there. It's a wide range of people over there trying to make their government work for them or push their government in a better, more humane direction. And I don't want us to get caught up in this war talk and the propaganda that happens and dehumanize the people over there. And I don't want them to dehumanize the people over here, because we know that there's some people over here that's not fucking with what Pumpkin Palpatine is doing. Anyway, I hope you learned something. I hope that you were enriched by this conversation. If you enjoyed it, share it with your people. Rate it, comment, subscribe, let me know your thoughts, all that kind of good stuff. Now, if you got some coins, send a donation or become a patron. But just the ways that you can help without costing you any money is to share it with your people. Share it on your social media platforms. Share. Yeah, in this time of anti-trans rhetoric, we want to see your support. Thank you for listening.
See, you care too much what they think. Focus on me, 'cause I'm the only one who's always there whenever you need.